you not?
Good things. It's like Christmas morning.
Come gather round this riverside campfire. There's stories to be told. I'm Nick Turner, and this is Jopre's Whitewater, a celebration of whitewater kayaking and the legends who've shaped the sport.
Brought to you by Kayak Session Magazine, the international whitewater magazine. This magazine is a true work of art. If you've never picked one up before, go to the local shop, find one, and look through, and you will be amazed at what the sport is doing right now. If you want to find out what the latest expeditions are going on all around the world, it's in Kayak Session Magazine in the news section. If you want to find out in-depth articles on the latest exploits of the very best paddlers in the world, it's in Kayak Session Magazine. The artwork, the photography is on another level from anything you've ever seen. The founder of Kayak Session Magazine, Toon, Philippe, anyone who's been in the industry very long knows him well and knows that nobody is more true to the sport. So if you want to support the sport, see what all the latest people are doing, and get the very best eye candy available on earth in the sport of whitewater kayaking, then do yourself a favor, go to kayaksession.com and pony up some of those dollars, drink a few less PBRs, and get yourself a subscription. Your buddies will bring beer over to come read the magazine at your house. Kayak Session Magazine, the international whitewater magazine.
Rocking and rolling.
All right. Total pleasure today to have on Rush Sturges, a guy who's been an absolute creative force of nature in whitewater. It's really just done amazing things, film, music, as well as being elite kayaker, things like junior world champion, as well as pretty much putting out the first viral kayaking clip, I think, of the slide there. But yeah, great to have you, Rush. And yeah, where'd you grow up? How'd you get into kayaking?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. It's a pleasure. Yeah, I grew up watching you along with all the boys in the Nurpu movie and Valhalla, and that was huge inspiration for me as a kid. I grew up in Northern California on a river called the Salmon, and yeah, got my start there. My folks ran a kayak school there for about 40 years called Otter Bar, and so I started paddling at their kayak school, doing video boating as kind of a summer job. That's kind of how I got into filmmaking. And honestly, it really was kind of those your guys' early movies that really in so many ways got me the most stoked on kayaking, especially Nurpu. I think I would say it was one of my biggest influences, just because it was combined such a high level of kayaking with really cool artistry. And I seriously think I watched that thing like 1,000 times. So that's kind of how I got my start.
Nice. I did the same with Cavu Day. But
Nice.
yeah, that Otter Bar, just one of the most iconic kayak schools of all time. Just such a special place there. That grassy lawn, right where the two forks of the Salmon come together, and below that, one of the best runs in the country, really, the Cal Salmon. But do you remember, so you were just born into it, you didn't really have much choice, but do you remember ever, a moment where you're like, I'm a kayaker, this, I'm doing it, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was, my dad invited me to come down the Grand Canyon with him when I was 14 years old, and that was definitely, I think, eye-opening, because I just sort of realized there was a lot more depth to the sport than I ever even knew. Just getting to camp out every night and be under the stars, and, the sort of camaraderie that comes along with a river trip. And I think also that transitional period into kind of, teenage years, adolescence, it was also just it was spiritual, honestly. And it was kind of at that moment, along the banks there that I remember one night just being like, this is all I want to do with my life.
Nice. That's awesome. And then you went into world class for high school and went deep. You kind of just really created such a core of people that came out of that, and you guys just created such a bond. It's unbelievable.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky to get the opportunity to attend World Class Academy, which is a traveling kayak high school. And yeah, that's where I met a lot of my best friends. It was in the same group where Tyler Brott was there, and Lane Jacobs and Aaron Reddig. Everybody, all of which have kind of gone on to do interesting and cool things in the sport. Capo now actually runs World Class. And Tyler is one of my closest paddling buddies, and Lane and I still get out a lot together. So it was really cool to kind of create these lifelong friendships, and yeah, super super lucky to have that opportunity.
And even then, you guys were kind of all in on recording what you were doing, like it was just part of the deal.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was, I mean, you lived through the different era, like, before social media. It kind of had there was its sort of own ecosystem of media, which was more magazine driven. It was more film driven. If you got a section in the new Shred Flick, that was, appealing for sponsors. I had, incentives with different sponsors for, X number of photos in a magazine, things like that. So it's kind of like different than it is today. So I honestly sort of have some nostalgia for that period of time, just because it felt like it was a little less of a feeding frenzy, just this like kind of constant, need to sort of be putting your kind of life out there, which is kind of what social media has become, for better or worse. Feels like for the worse in some ways right now, but yeah, like that period of time, it was definitely like, let's document ourselves doing this. And in the very beginning, it was just 100% shred flicks, not a whole lot of depth to our storytelling. And that kind of, I think, evolved over time as we did.
Yeah, that was always the thing, kind of wanted to do more, right? But the genre just got so stuck into shred flick, and kind of across sports, right? All the extreme sports kind of got there.
Yeah.
Right. And then how'd you kind of hook up and form YGP, the Young Gun Productions, and you guys are kind of, yeah, it's interesting how you really lived that transition from the annual movie, the magazines are so important, to social media, just fully through that whole era. But kind of YGP was where kind of started getting some movies out there.
Yeah. So when I went to, before World Class was World Class, there was an academy called Adventure Quest, and I did a semester there, and that's where I met a couple buddies, Brooks Baldwin and Marlo Long, and we're all kind of interested in doing film stuff, so we sort of banded together and just started filming each other, and put out a film called The Next Generation when I was 17 years old at the time, when we put that out, and premiered it at Outdoor Retailer. And at the time it was cool because we were young for the time, and doing a lot of the freestyle tricks that the older guys were doing, and it caught some attention. And Teva actually at that OR kind of saw the movie and was like, hey, we'd like to support your guys' next project, which I worked on for a couple of years, which is a film called New Rain. And we were just kind of like young punk teenage kids filming our exploits. And at that time it was kind of a different model in terms of how you could sort of make a living with kayaking. And in some ways I think it was easier, just because we'd get multiple sponsors to come on board to support our movies. We'd have a presenting sponsor, Teva, usually, and then a bunch of kind of smaller sponsors. So all those companies and brands would give us a little bit of money. It wasn't a lot, but it was honestly at the time for us, pretty decent, and enough for us to basically go out, travel, film, and then every year or two kind of put together a film that then you could also sell on the back end, DVDs, and even the first one was VHS actually. But we were selling thousands of copies of our movie, and because at that time there was no real like sort of internet platform for stuff, so it was really like hard copies of stuff still kind of reigned supreme. And literally would be kind of selling those movies out the back of my Volvo station wagon and going to rodeos and hucking waterfalls. And it's really honestly, like, in so many ways, it was the most kind of amazing chapter of my life. It was just everything was new and fresh and fun, and that was just a really, you lived through it too, but it was a special era.
Yeah, it's so special to have a group of people, right, working towards that same like creative goal and that same passion, all putting their energy to one thing.
Yeah, it was cool. And I think, like looking back on it, it was, I don't even know if we really realized how kind of special that was. I feel like in some ways like kayaking still remains this really core community sport, which I think is awesome, like so much more so than a lot of other sports. And I think there's a variety of reasons for that, but one of which is that you really do depend on your team when you're on the river. Um, but I think that period of time was cool too, because yeah, it was built. A lot of it was built around rodeo. That was a popular thing at the time. That's where everybody got together and partied and hung out. And then there was also film premieres and film tours and those things combined, I feel like really created this like strong sense of community, which I feel like we still have in paddling, but I'd love to see it come back a little bit stronger. It seems like, after, like through, I think COVID kind of separated everybody like even more than it even before that was. And then now it's like, I don't know, they're just, it just would be awesome to get more of that sort of in-person, kind of vibe back to things.
Yeah, yeah, and it's crazy how that even started, right? It was kind of just out of AW events, American
Mhm.
Whitewater events maybe, and then like I think on the West, I think Gravere was kind of the first to start to
Yeah.
be like, I'm gonna go to all of these, and then it kind of just created this whole
Yeah.
movement, and people started arranging them
Yep.
so that they would not fall on the same weekends, and it would always start right over there in California.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was, freestyle was this sort of, it was, I mean, I was there for also the death of that, scene too, which I think we were sort of outspoken against it in a lot of ways too, because I think that it sort of got a little bit old at some point, where the boats hadn't really, they'd gotten so short that it wasn't, like it wasn't evolving really. And for us, we were more excited about, surfing big waves and the sort of rodeo scene, the world championships, like all of that stuff. It didn't really want to transition to these kind of like more remote locations where you would have features that were actually a lot more exciting to watch. And so I think for us, we were kind of like, we don't necessarily want to be on this circuit, particularly going to these like the dog and pony shows, and granted they serve their purpose. And I think that looking back, I don't think we actually realized how kind of cool that community aspect was, or I didn't. But for us, it was kind of like, I think that transition probably 2005, 4 or 5, like that period of time. It was like, no, we're going to go to Quebec and Africa and go out into the middle of nowhere, and, do our own thing and film it. And, we don't really care about this competition thing anymore.
So do you actually remember before they actually calling you saying, "Hey, are you guys coming to the rodeo?"
Oh yeah.
And you
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was always this drama because, Teva it was part of our contract that we'd have to go to mountain games. And frankly, I like just did not like going to mountain games, which is, sounds very, very, looking back, I was probably being a bit, of pretentious or spoiled, but it fell during Royal Gorge always, like Royal Gorge would go that week, or stuff in California that I would way rather be at than being in some kind of small tiny rodeo hole, which I just didn't at that point wasn't really like practicing for. And I feel like the sport kind of went in a couple different directions. There was like the folks that kind of stuck with the rodeo thing and just sort of really pursued that, which honestly is like, it's so technical and so hard, and I have a ton of respect for it, but that just wasn't as YGP. That was like not where we wanted to go. We wanted to surf big waves, run waterfalls, do expeditions. It kind of was evolving in that direction for us.
well, at least it died on like a supernova of the Whitewater Grand Prix, right? Like it reached that absolute climax of what you could do in a competition for whitewater kayaking.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Whitewater Grand Prix was sort of the antithesis of what was going on in the sort of, Vail Mountain Games, like, rodeo scene, where it was like having these events and frankly pretty like subpar features, small holes, and Grand Prix was like, no, let's go to the absolute best waves, the best, hardest creeks. There's going to be nobody out there, but we're going to bring a crew of, 20, 25 guys and gals, and we're going to go out there and, kind of just do our own competition. It's going to be filmed and turned into a TV show. And I mean, shout out to Patrick Hamlin, because that was really his brainchild, and it's such a shame it couldn't keep going because, although there's only 3 Grand Prix, like each one of them was such an incredible event and, gathering of folks.
Yeah, it was right there with the Red Bull Rampage, it was just, and just like, yeah, you had all the best too came together from all over the world and just went to the gnarliest stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone even scared the best kayakers in the world running just.
Yeah, it was scary. I mean, those events were legit. Like looking back, even by today's standards, those were hard, dangerous, steep creeks and, huge freestyle waves. And I mean, it was pretty radical. And, the Send boys, Dane and Bren and that whole crew, they put together their Unleashed event, which kind of followed in similar sort of style to the Grand Prix, kind of years after. But, currently there's just really not, with the North Fork Championship gone especially, it's kind of like, I feel like there's really, it would be awesome to see something like that kind of come back in the sport, because it's like, it's a great way to get everybody together and really kind of, push the envelope.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, with Sickline and North Fork gone, like there is no gathering.
Right. I know. Yeah. I mean, there's stuff happening, like Little White Race has gotten quite big out here. And I mean, that's a super rad event. But I think we're sort of missing that kind of, the cool part about those events is that they're exploratory for everybody, like, especially like the Grand Prix in Quebec. It was like, we'd be driving around looking for the next race course, like it hadn't been decided until like the night before kind of thing, depending on levels. And there's just something kind of exciting. And also I think like really sets it makes an event like that, I think, really fair, because, Little White Race or something like, and like that is just like, it's such a locals game really in a lot of ways. Like if you've had the advantage to train on it all the time, whereas if you just like show up on some random river and you've got to like, you got one day to practice on it, I feel like that's a pretty, cool way to do an event.
Yeah, I'm just really cemented that community of you guys that really just became best friends, from all over the world, all the best kayakers. So even though maybe the sponsor money was going away, it almost just brought the community even tighter together.
Yeah, I think that's true for sure.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I got a bone to pick on that Whitewater Grand Prix though. That bugged me for 10 years. Well, so what they do, and they do a outside feature article on it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's only you only get one of those every generation, right? I remember when I was a kid, it was Chris Spelius got a cover, and then Brad Ludden got a cover 10 years later, right? And then this was the next one, and it just did not do it justice. I don't know if we want to name names or what, but I mean, even the headline, right? I mean, this is the best kayakers from all over the world doing the gnarliest competition ever. It's like the Red Bull Rampage 8 times, and goes up the title. So I even looked it up last night. I was like, I wonder if that article's still out there, and man, even the title is like alcohol soaked whatever dream thing, I was like, ah. Yeah. And then in the article, it's kind of I don't know, it just didn't celebrate it, right? This was its moment to be celebrated, and it kind of harsh, I mean, they used the word hangover 4 or 5 times. Oh, yeah. Just didn't. And then the worst was when a guy, because I remember sitting in this coffee shop reading the article. It's one of those where you remember where you were. Yeah. But it had been getting more and more bummed as I went through, and I think right at the end he It's like, oh, and Rush took me out to show me some of his raps,
Yeah,
you know,
he like
and he's
dissed
just
me.
stick
Yeah.
to kayaking. I was like, what the? And even right then, I remember like Rush is gonna
Oh yeah.
show that up, man.
Yeah, no, that was a good learning lesson, honestly. Because I really liked the writer that was on that trip who wrote the article. He was super nice and everything, but I think it's a good learning lesson, like to frankly not trust writers. Because yeah, we felt like we kind of like this guy sort of earned our trust a little bit, and we were comfortable with him being around, and for whatever reason outside was just kind of out for blood on that one, and just really chose to focus on the partying, which I'm not going to deny there was definitely a decent amount of, but it felt very sort of sensationalized and like almost like tabloidy a little bit to just focus on that, when really like there was such remarkable stuff happening on the river and the whitewater. And yeah, there were celebrations, but it was grossly exaggerated in my opinion, and felt a little bit. I mean, it was, one of my favorite parts of that article, honestly, was, and I don't remember the exact words or anything, but like Nick Troutman, who is like probably was like the most mellow person on the entire circuit on the and for some, but he partied on the last night or something, and he gets mentioned in the article as like some big partier or something, which we just all thought that was hilarious, Nick especially, but we were not very happy with that article at the time, and I feel like there was a number of those kinds of articles written, whether that was in the Young Gun era or that sort of period of time, that especially by Outside actually, that were just kind of, yeah, they felt a little bit like burns, but looking back, it's like we were pretty young and probably a little more rowdy off the water than maybe some of those writers were accustomed to, so I don't know, it is what it is.
Yeah. No, Carberry might have been a good one to write it.
Yeah, more close to it.
But yeah, no, that's I hadn't thought how much you would live through. The New Rain actually came out on VHS, like to that viral Lions Bay clip. Like that was only 10 years maybe.
Yeah, I think New Rain was 2004. New Rain was actually just DVD, but before that was Next Generation, which was VHS. But that's the Lions Bay, the drainage ditch clip is, that one kind of cracks me up a little bit. One, because we had no idea. You just never know when something is going to go viral, which is, I guess, kind of the whole thing. But that was a funny chapter because we had done, it was 2011. We went to the Congo and we did the Congo, which was definitely, like, to this day the biggest mission of my life. And that same following season, Ben Mar ran Site Z on the Stikine, which was like a pretty big deal. And then that same summer we went out and we did like the drainage ditch. And it was like nothing, none of those other things I think got like very little mention or play anywhere. And then it was like this sliding down, which is, sliding down this ditch was funny, but relatively chill compared to, kind of all the other sort of exploits of that kind of chapter in time, so it was, Benny and I to this day like laugh about that one. It's pretty funny because it's still getting mileage, it still pops up, and you see it on some random account and it's got like 13 million views on it or something. Like people have stolen that thing and posted it on all sorts of weird stuff. So it's funny for sure.
Yeah, that Benny's Site Z run, that was amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
No play, annuals, solo, high water descent, no real press.
Yeah,
I love that article that did come out, though. There was some article that said this is like the most underrated achievement. That was really cool.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's kind of, kayaking's kind of cool like that in a way too. It's like Lindgren would say this, everything is kind of a campfire story in kayaking, and it's pretty true, like it still is this just kind of, niche little sport that, it pops into the limelight every once in a while and gets a little bit of attention. But it's pretty kind of small core community, and if the people who know, and the rest don't, necessarily have to.
Yeah, no, it'll keep evolving, right? That was funny how it did just blow up, right? You guys were really right on the tail end of it, the blow up where everyone's like, "Oh, well, let's go kayaking. It's just like mountain biking, but on the river." Or what. I don't even understand now why it blew up so much. Well, talking to Corin, actually, it was really interesting because he was made the point, if during that whole era, late 90s, early 2000s, like if you had the new boat, you were doing the same moves the world champion was doing 2 years before.
Right. Yeah. 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 There was like that definitely. I mean, I kind of lived through all that because, I started paddling in 1995, and then that period of time, like 95 to 2003, I think is really probably kind of like the golden age of kayaking in a lot of ways. I was a little young for it, but you had the new boats coming out every year, which I don't think the kids today like necessarily realize like it's like it made such a big difference, like you actually kind of had to have the new design every year or two to have, to be able to do all the stuff. And I mean, I remember, getting in, going from the Dagger Blast to like the Necky Jive and then getting like then it was like, that X and the Mr. Clean and I don't know, it's just like the Vengeance and all these boats, like every year it was like better. And I feel like it was like, for me anyway, it was kind of like once the G-Force came out, like not a lot got a whole lot different after that, for sure it did. Like if things were tweaked, you got like the Kingpin and then things got a little smaller, but it's like the playboats have kind of like more or less for sure gotten better, but like it's not like they could get any shorter, and then I think it's kind of cool that you're seeing now like a resurgence of the sort of the river runner style of boats, like the sort of RPM style half slices, like that's now become such a popular thing, which makes sense. It was because during the 90s that's what everybody was kind of rocking all the time, and now there's kind of like a return to that, which I think is cool.
Everything goes full circle.
It does. Yeah, it really does.
You almost could have ridden that whole period out though with like a tornado to an X to a disco.
Disco was big, yeah. Yep.
That was the first real short boat, right?
True, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yep.
The disco. So on music, were you really just kind of were you doing it when you were in school there in Forks of Salmon, like starting to record stuff?
I started writing raps when I was like, I think probably when I was like around 13 or something, maybe even a little earlier. I started memorizing raps first. That's kind of how I started doing it. Initially I was like really into the Beastie Boys, and that's kind of just how I started doing it. And then when I got into high school, started writing more of my own stuff. And yeah, it's just always kind of been like a passion project. And it was initially just like, honestly, songs usually making, fun of other people at school that I wasn't a huge fan of, or, just like my way of like sort of expressing various things, stories. And then, yeah, I recorded a little bit in high school, and then really started getting more into it kind of like after I graduated and starting to write a lot more consistently. And I mean, to this day, I still try to write a little bit every day if I can, and sometimes I'll write a lot, but it's definitely more, it's a passion project, but I enjoy doing it.
What were you first recording on? Like a little
Yeah, one of my buddies had like just like one of those modular, like, I don't know, like little, I don't even know if it's an MPC or what it was, but it recorded like internally onto like a hard drive that didn't have much space. And so I did some songs on that, which hopefully never surface. And then when I got out of high school, my buddy Rudy Slazuski, who I have collaborated with on almost every song I've ever done, he was living out in Arcata, California, and had access to like a pretty decent little studio out there. So I would go out there and kind of record all my stuff. And then, in more recent history, the last kind of decade, I just got my own little basic home studio set up, and that's where I'll do my demos and kind of just build my tracks out, and then I'll go to a studio in Portland to kind of finish my songs.
Nice. Yeah, I've been loving your music, man. It's been great to have in life. It's just when I first started listening a lot, I was like, oh, am I really into this music because it's just like telling my life story, or am I really into it? And I've, of course, decided it's really, really good.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's
Thanks.
just amazing, good music. I love it, and just like the way you're a producer, I think you just have insane talent on production, right? And bringing in these collaborators and all these different styles, like that's what I'm like, damn, that's sick production.
Oh, thanks, man. No, I appreciate that. I mean, I feel like film really kind of set me up really well for it, because film is like making a movie is a community art project. It's like you have to combine so many different elements together, because but that being said, I've also worked with such small budgets in film that I've had to kind of do every part of it, from everything from clearing music rights, which is its own like beast in and of itself, but that gives you like the connections to the artists, and you get to know the right people that way through record labels and things like that, to like the kind of business side of it, to just all of it it set me up really well, I think, to start producing music also, because I'm not like a technically great musician at all. Like I couldn't really break down how music even works from like I like to say that I'm all heart and almost no head in the game with it, but yeah, like I feel like so much time spent on trying to write songs, and I think that's maybe something people don't see, is like for Lessons in Folk Pop, my latest album, it's like that's like a lot of different content that I have sort of boiled down to 11 tracks, like a lot of different hooks that didn't quite work, or tracks that just didn't quite vibe, but then you mix verses together, and I don't know, you just like find a way through, and a lot of it is experimental, and a lot of stuff doesn't really quite make it, but yeah, it's been a fun process, and I think lately especially too, like it feels like it's becoming more streamlined for me, and something that I'm able to, I feel like I'm getting faster at writing and putting songs together. Like it's getting kind of easier in a way, which has been fun.
Yeah, Lessons in Folk Hop, it's good, man. That's hard, That's a hard album to do the production on, right? To blend all that stuff and mix those styles. And actually, I've got I got a friend, Billy Strings.
Oh yeah,
Probably, you
for
heard of
sure.
him.
Oh yeah,
And
big time.
so, and he's kind of gotten to this position, right? As like, he's sort of this generational talent in bluegrass, but he's not really mixing it up. It's still real traditional. I happen to have this buddy in Moab who grew up with Billy, and he was kind of a music guy too, and when Billy was real young, helped him out a lot. But not that he needs the Lessons in Folk Hop treatment, but he kind of needs the Lessons in Folk Hop treatment, and then he'd probably win a Grammy, and be like, oh, he's changed bluegrass forever.
Oh man, I mean, dude, I if you got a contact there, let me know. I'd love to collab with Billy Strings.
I'd love to see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a cult. He has a cult following, and I mean, he's dope. He's really, really good. I have so many friends here in White Salmon who are just like obsessed with his music, and like the bluegrass thing, I respect it a lot. It's never been like exactly my genre, but I do love country, and I do love folk, and I do love I love everything, honestly. Like I'll listen to really any kind of music, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, he's just stayed real traditional, It's still like he definitely is in such a perfect position to be someone who stretches the boundaries of bluegrass right now.
Yeah, I've heard his live show is just insane though. Like it's like never the same, and he's always doing different stuff. And it's like almost it sort of has like that Fish, Grateful Dead sort of aspect to it, which I respect a lot. That's hard to do for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you do every part on these things, right? Of just having such passion and then backing it with such hustle. Like on the River Runner, recorded all the music for it, went and filmed it, and edited it. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's I wish I could say that it's because it's like it's not necessarily what I want to be doing. It's sort of, I feel like in this industry, your hand gets kind of forced like that. It's not, it's like if I had millions of dollars or like the proper budgets to do this stuff, I would do a lot less work myself just because it is draining, and it's aspects of it are fun, but sometimes it just feels honestly like a bit overwhelming. And I think with River Runner and sort of the years that followed it, I have started to realize like, oh, like actually like my mental health actually suffers a little bit from this. But if I'm just going, like it's hard because I do like all of it, but like one person can kind of only do so much. I think before you get a little bit burned out. So I actually have been transitioning from not, I mean, it's kind of hard. It's hard with some of these projects. I still have to do a little bit of everything. But I'm also like a producer on some films right now where I'm not, that's like just my only job is as an executive producer, like giving notes on the film and doing some stuff, but it's less strenuous than like when you're directing. You kind of just sort of do have to do a little bit of everything. At least I feel like a lot of the good directors do at least have their sort of hands in a bit of all of it,
Yeah, that was really cool to see that one get out there on Netflix and, really get some mileage.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think that we got lucky, that was like, it was, it's that sort of COVID era, and Netflix was hungry for content because people weren't creating films as easily. And so, I don't know that they would have, to get a kayak film on there, that was the dream. That was like when I started making that movie, that was my main goal. And I think we got, super, super lucky to time that the way that we did. I don't know that would happen today. But yeah, I was grateful because it can go so many ways with a film. It is like such a hustle. I mean, I'm working on a feature right now, and it's like we're still looking to get funding, to get distribution, like all that stuff. Despite having done a couple of features that got distribution and theatrical releases and streaming on big platforms, like it's still hard. I'm still not always locking that in. So and especially right now, not to go on a tangent, but it's like the documentary world is in a pretty fragile spot right now. It's things are not easy in the filmmaking world right now. It's definitely like an interesting transition period. I feel like there's sort of like the golden age of documentary filmmaking just a few years ago, not long ago, when they started being more mainstream and actually doing well in the theaters. And like, I mean, you probably remember like when we were kids or younger, like documentaries were like not as cool as they are now, it's just a little more cookie cutter, like, basic, I guess. And now it's like, it's kind of, there's like blockbuster documentaries, so it's kind of I feel like the sort of big studios and the Netflixes and the kind of like, the sort of like, the kind of, I'm not sure how to describe it, but it feels like it's sort of been taken over a little bit by some of the bigger fish in the sea, and it's a little bit harder as the little guys to sort of get that same production and same distribution.
Yeah, it's such a swirl of content now. But I mean, even rolling it back, right? If all you boys were 17 again right now, right? You'd just be making these quick YouTube clips of every day of running stuff, going all over the world, right? And people would just be following that. So I guess you'd still...
Yeah. I feel like it benefits in a lot of ways the new model. It benefits the individual in a lot of ways, where it's like, because I remember I was there for that transition. Like I remember getting like, my GoPro sponsorship and getting a salary from them and all of that. And it was like, it was such a relief in a way, because I was like, finally, here's this thing, social media, which at the time was, that was kind of like almost even before Instagram was big. It was, Facebook, and I was definitely there at the kind of very beginning of that. And I remember having my meeting with GoPro, and they were like, we think that you're worth this amount because you've gotten this many views. And like they literally had an actual program that they were punching in the stats, for what they felt like my like quote unquote worth was. And that was great. I felt, because I was like, I felt for a long time, it was kind of like, I guess like kind of the negative side of that, like the magazine, like film era was like, it was almost maybe harder for sponsors to see everything that you're doing, so I would like go to Outdoor Retailer with like a book that was like, here's what I did this last year. Here's, showing everything. And now it's kind of like, oh, your entire value is basically based on social media. And I think that's like good in some ways. And I think what it kind of lacks is that it doesn't, what I think I've realized over the years is that so much of an athlete or artist, really, like so much of your value in terms of like sponsors, I think, is like the relationships that you build within your community, and I don't think that should just be reduced to your, social media following, or, what the type of influence you have in that sort of community is, although I think it's important. Like when it really comes down to, I feel like, what you do in your community matters, as much or a lot more probably.
Yeah, and in a way, I guess people sort of are getting more control over it rather than having to go to a sponsor. I know you think about people like Nathan Florence, right, and surfing. That's like, not going to do whatever tour. I'm just going to go out and put out content.
Mm-hmm.
And, you click on his videos on YouTube, it's like a Tide ad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I mean, I feel like whatever helps you live the dream and pursue your passion, and if you gotta throw a corporate sponsor on there to do it, I'm not like hating on it necessarily, but it has kind of, and I guess like the contrast is like the era that we lived through. It was kind of like these, crews that were kind of like with you guys, like it was, like when you're doing the TGR thing with Arden and Trask, and like there was like kind of like a community of folks like built around that, and it was the Driftwood crew with Scott Lindgren. There was Epicosity when we were, kind of like our sort of sister sort of production company to Young Gun Productions. And so I don't know, it's just different now. Like there isn't that same, I feel like there's still crews and still like groups of people in kayaking, but because of the, like, I think GoPro has been a big part of it, the sort of individualization of everything, where it's just like, here's my perspective and my perspective only. They're like, absolutely, we've lost a certain amount of storytelling, and that it's just, I think it's going to make a comeback, but right now it's sort of like we're kind of living in the era of like the self, the me,
Yeah, but like you said, you're dependent on your crew in kayaking, so
True.
I guess there'll always be a little bit of that. But yeah, no, because it really went from kind of competing crews, right, in our era, whether it was the different teams like Dagger, Wave Sport, Riot, or the different production companies, to then feel like your guys' generation and through the Grand Prix and all that, it became kind of one solid crew of all the best kayakers in the world. We're all best friends, and then I guess now maybe going to individualizing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I feel like there definitely are still crews and communities and folks of people, but yeah, it's just slightly different than the way that it kind of used to be,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one thing being creative, I guess, what holds a lot of people back, right, is you kind of got to be this vulnerableness, right? And did you feel that even when you were young, like struggle with like, oh, how do I put this rap out there, and be vulnerable like that? Because you're really able to well in music today.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. As an artist, there's like always a deep-seated fear of rejection, and I think I've had that with every project I've ever done. I think the only thing that actually helps that is just doing a project and then realizing that not everybody's gonna love it. You're gonna get criticisms, and I feel like for me anyway, those critiques came a lot harder when I was younger. Like I'll never forget, like we released our, I remember Corin Addison actually, that's because he was always really supportive of us. Like when we did our Next Generation video, gave us big props, and we did New Rain and he gave us props, and then we put out Dynasty, and it was kind of like another shred flick. Like we hadn't really like evolved, and we were kind of under a bigger magnifying glass because at the time we'd had like a Volkswagen sponsorship, and Outside premiered it at the show and did a lot of promo behind it and everything. And I remember Corin writing this just like scathing review of the movie. He gave it a 1 out of 10. And I was just like demoralized by it. I was like, oh my God, like, is he right? And it kind of taught me a good lesson though, which is like, I mean, one is like, don't read the forum boards, or, now it's like the Facebook comments or whatever, Instagram comments. Like, you can, but just be prepared for, everybody's going to have an opinion. Some people aren't going to necessarily like it, but at the end of the day, that's art. It's like, I don't expect everybody to, I've been totally, had my music bashed before by folks, and, like it doesn't have to be for everybody, in fact, it can't be. So, you just sort of roll with the punches. And I mean, I still listen to input, and if people have critiques, like sometimes that can be good to hear, especially when it's constructive, but you can't dwell on it too long. It's like, just like you finish one thing, start the next, and keep going.
Well, and at the end of the day, none of it's ever really bad anyway, right? Like there's way more fear of it, I think, for people than the actual result. And even if it does get that sort of conversation, was it good or not, it blows it up even more these days, right? So like someone like Corin doing a 1 out of 10 is almost like a gift,
Right.
these days, because it's like, oh, now I can start to get a lot of discussion about that. But yeah, so many people, I think, hold themselves back. Well, all of us, just human nature, right?
Yeah.
On doing things because we're, can't be vulnerable. It's hard.
It's true. Yeah, I think, if you get people talking about stuff, and I think Corin always used to say that too, like it's cliche, but any exposure is good exposure, and, to a certain extent, I guess. But I think that's true though. Yeah, I think it's like, if you get people talking, it's not a bad thing. And like you said, none of it's necessarily bad. It's just, everyone's got an opinion.
Maybe Rudy Rampage, and that was a bit of like letting out steam on that end too, to make it a joke.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like for listeners unfamiliar, Rudy Rampage was a little character that I used to do, but he got canceled. He actually canceled himself before he could even get canceled, because I think he saw the cancel culture wars coming, and I feel like it probably, some of it hasn't aged well. But I did really like doing that sort of persona, because it, like, in a lot of ways did represent a part of me, and like Rudy is like this sort of, he's like the quintessential like action sports, like egotistical, full of himself, super sponsored, like he kind of like represents like the worst part of, honestly, just adventure sports culture, period. And for sure, like that person is probably inside of me at some level or another, loves just like partying to the max, misogynistic, all those like sort of terrible, I don't know, just like sort of frat boy traits almost. But we definitely built up like a persona around Rudy, and I kind of still sort of have dreams of like trying to bring back that comedy skit, funny, sort of humor, like, because it was fun to do. We maybe pushed a little bit of it, maybe too far, made a few sponsors pretty pissed off, but it's at this point, whatever, I got nothing to lose now. Maybe it's time to bring Rudy back to the arena.
Well, now, like we were just saying, you're not dependent on these sponsors, right? It's just, if you're getting views, you're getting views. And
Yeah, that actually honestly feels really good. It's like, I, over the last several years, have kind of, I guess, mostly sort of transitioned out of being like, professional paddler, although it's always hard to define what that even means. Like, I still get deals and on, like, work with companies, and a lot of it's like usually a social media driven campaign, and I still make money from it, and I still do ads and things like that. And that's honestly kind of where most of the real money is anyways, is getting to kayaking commercials, stuff like that. So I'm not like, that's not totally done for me, and hopefully I can still kind of keep doing that stuff. But yeah, in terms of the like endemic kayak scene sponsors, like, sort of needing X, Y, and Z throughout the year to kind of maintain your salary and stuff, like, I'm pretty much done with that side of it, though I'm still grateful to the sponsors I have for like gear and support, and all of that, still hustling on that front for sure.
I think I remember probably the first ad maybe you were ever in, like the World Class ad that said "One of Us."
Oh yeah. I don't think I remember that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, a lot since then, huh? That's at the bottom of that binder.
That's funny. Yeah, I think it said like 3.2 GPA, one of us or something like that, which is kind of funnier.
When world junior champion.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah, that was a breakout year for me for sure. That was like 2003 when I first kind of started to. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's different then too. Like I really do feel for the kids today. Like it's got to be kind of hard, Like I feel like in some ways we felt like we were a little late to the party. Like like before us, like Lindgren's kind of crew and your guys' crew, Selznick and Ludden and like, you know, it seems like back then. I mean, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like there was more money being injected into the sport. Like Nike was involved and like. There was rumors about, athletes signing these like big figure contracts and things like that. Like it felt like that 90s chapter was just like, I don't know, we came in like kind of early 2000s and it seemed like that generation kind of got the like, I don't know. Do you think that's accurate to say? Like it was just a little bit easier before our period of time?
Yeah, I think it peaked then for sure. I mean, it's still just kayaking, right? But
Yeah.
it definitely hit a peak right then, And right, I think maybe the turning point when the Bank of Bahrain bought
Yeah.
both Dagger and Perception.
Perception. Yeah. That was big. That and then September 11th was, I think, a big one. Like the industry kind of got really, I think I remember hearing like that rafting outfits, dropped by like 50% that following year. And it kind of all synced up with the boat designs sort of like hitting a little bit of like a peak as well too, like they just weren't evolving the way that they had kind of before that. But yeah, whatever happened, it was kind of like we did kind of come in at this like sort of like lull period where everything was kind of a bit stagnant, but I look at like the kids today and I'm like, man, it's got to be even harder because like for me, like that period of time you were talking about, like the year that I did the worlds and won the juniors, like I got offered a contract from Teva at that point, and it wasn't like huge money, but it was money, and when you're like 19 years old, like it really wasn't bad, and like I was able to make a living off of kayaking from that point forward, without help along the way, and so that's like, I feel like that would be really difficult to do today, and I mean, maybe there's a handful of folks out there still making it work for sure, but definitely has gotten a lot harder, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, and boat design didn't just peak. It kind of got to where got harder, right? Once the boats got so small, then all of a sudden these people who were getting so much better every year with the new boats started feeling like they couldn't even paddle because the boats were so small and
Yep.
everything getting specialized.
Yep.
It's only now coming back, right back to the hurricane and RPM.
I know, it's interesting. It is full circle for sure. Yeah, and I feel like I don't know what it is too. I think every sport kind of has its like moment, and maybe kayaking will. I think it has come back in some ways, but in others, like it's not evolved to, like and maybe what we were talking about earlier, I think is something where we could improve is like, sort of bringing back that community aspect of it, whether it's events, competitions, film premieres, like how do you grow the sport? How do you make it bigger? I feel like you got to expose more people to it, make it more accessible. I think that's like the thing that kayaking's always had against it, which is also the part that makes it the coolest, in my opinion, is that it's just the access, like you can't, there's not a whitewater park in every town like the way there's a skate park, like it's not like surfing where there's just like millions of ocean breaks around the world. Like it's a little more difficult to get to, and that's like definitely something I've been more passionate about recently, is like, okay, how do we get other other folks into the sports, especially like communities that really don't have access to it. Like, I grew up in Northern California around a lot of different indigenous communities there, and that's kind of what prompted me to get involved with this Paddle Tribal Waters program, which is like basically getting kayak clubs going in communities and on reservations where there's like no access to paddling. And so that's been super, super fun, and definitely like kind of the main thing that's sort of been, that's been, I guess, taking up a lot of my time lately, with that sort of, transition.
That was a really cool project, that Tribal Paddle Waters. And now now you see them out on the river. You still paddle with some of them.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd say yeah, it's kind of like the thing that I'm probably working on the most right now is this yeah, and I guess for folks unfamiliar, it's this Rios to Rivers is this nonprofit basically designed to teach Native kids the sport of kayaking, and it kind of started with them doing like exchange programs where they'd bring kids from Chile up to the Klamath River in Northern California, which is where I grew up, and do these exchanges where basically they would take kids from a watershed in Chile where there'd been like no dams at all, and they bring them to the Klamath, and they'd show how much damage the dams on the Klamath had done to the fish and to the indigenous communities, and to the health of the river. And then vice versa, they'd bring the kids from the Klamath down to Chile, show them an indigenous community down there that's living on a pristine river. And so that's kind of how it started. And then I guess about 3 or 4 years ago, I got involved with them, kind of helping create the sort of U.S. like hard shell kayaking program, which is called Paddle Tribal Waters. And we started it with the goal of this group of Native kids basically leading the first descent of the Klamath River once all the dams come out, which they've all come out now. So I've been following these kids for about 3 years now, and that we're doing the descent this June, source to sea descent, month long, with all the kids who've gone from being, class, not ever having sat in a kayak to within the span of a couple years being kind of grade 4 and even pushing grade 5 whitewater, paddling the Zambezi, paddling in Chile, Northwest. And a couple of these kids are super into it, and I think we're going to see a lot more of them on the kayak scene in the years to come here.
That's awesome. What a cool project. And is that the organization and they're based in Chile still?
So right now, so it's actually cool. So we did, one of the things we also started last year was a Paddle Tribal Waters Academy. So we partner with World Class Academy where I went to high school, and created an all indigenous kayak academy. So the kids right now, there's 13 of them. They're in Chile. They'll do a couple months down there, and then they'll do a couple months back here in the States. And so it's a lot. The fundraising goals are definitely ambitious for that, because we're providing 100% scholarships for 13 kids to do a semester of World Class Academy each year. The kids apply to go to it. This is the second year, and we want to really try to keep it going for next year, because I think like the realization that we kind of had was like there's a lot of nonprofits out there that will get kids from these types of communities into the outdoors, but it's oftentimes kind of short-lived. Like they're like 1 week, 2 week long programs, or like inner city kids, like getting them outside, and like those programs are really important, but a lot of them focus on quantity. And so I think like our realization was like, well, if you really want to create like lasting diversity in the sport, like going to World Class like actually really gets you into the sport of kayaking. And it's one of those sports that you can't just like do it for a week or two. It's like there's so much knowledge, there's so much skill. You need mentors, you need support systems, like you need a trip to the river, you need a car. Like there's a lot of barriers to entry with paddling. I feel like maybe more so than a lot of other sports, but it's also a lot more free than a lot of other sports too. A lot cheaper than skiing, and a lot of like, one of the cool things is a lot of these reservations, and they have epic rivers flowing right through them, but a lot of these kids have just never had that exposure, so yeah, so right now we're trying to keep this semester program afloat and keep it going every year so that we can kind of continue providing scholarships. So I'm always hustling on the fundraising side of that, so if anyone listening wants to support it, definitely reach out, because it's a pretty special thing.
That's amazing. Sending them to World Class, like, doesn't get any better than that, right? I mean, they're creating that same thing we were talking about, you created, right, with Tyler and everyone else.
Yeah, it creates lifelong friendships. I mean, it really like can't be understated. Like I feel like, without a doubt, so many of the best kayakers have come out of that program, like in the world, but also a lot of the leaders in the sport in different levels, like in all sorts of different ways have gone on to do, I think, really like meaningful and interesting things with their lives. And I think it's like, it's so much deeper than just kayaking. It's like when you're in high school and you get to go to a foreign country and you're traveling, and I mean the teachers are learning too as they go along the way. Like it's a lot of work to pack up 20 people into vans and drive to the next campground and do school every day and kayak on the river, and there's logistics and shuttles, and like it's exhausting and hard. Like it's not it's super fun, and it's like a super like privileged experience in a lot of ways, but it is actually like teaches you a lot about life. You know, it's definitely not always easy. And I've seen like a lot of kids go into that program with a certain type of attitude and come out very different and more adult like, you know, in the end. So I think it's such a great program, and I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and they really encourage that, right? I'm just like with your video editing, it was totally encouraged and part of school instead of this thing where you're having to go to this whatever school all day and then try to do something on the side.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's the best part about it too. Yeah. The education side of it's amazing because there's, you know, 13, 15 kids, and you've got, you know, 6 or 7 teachers or something like that. And the teachers are also into media, into kayaking. And so it kind of does really give you a solid foundation for, you know, pursuing that kind of content creation side of it if you're passionate about that.
Yeah. So that you mentioned the Congo trip, and I don't know, anytime anyone mentions that expedition you guys did, it's always kind of whispered tone like, "Oh, we're on the Congo trip." That how did that thing come together?
Let's see. I mean, you know, I guess like, when did I first hear? I first heard about the Congo from I think Steve Fisher, and maybe like probably like 2007, 2008 or something like that. You know, Fisher was a big mentor for me growing up. Like he was definitely the sort of top dog in the sport, and probably the person I looked up to the most. He was super accomplished in every style of kayaking, and that was always something I wanted to try to do as well, as be good at a little bit of everything. And you know, so he definitely took myself and some of the other young guns at the time kind of under his wing and brought me on trips and did projects together and filming. And you know, he was always talking about the Congo and how it was the biggest rapids in the world. You know, and also I think it's the second or third biggest river in the world, 1.6 million CFS. I think the Amazon is the only river that's bigger, but the Amazon has no rapids for the last 1,000 miles, and the Congo, before it goes into the ocean, drops about 320 feet. You know, with 1.6 million CFS, which is it really just kind of dwarfs any other system of rapids on the planet. Like there's nothing that even comes remotely close to that size. And you know, Fisher was kind of always the big water king. You know, he grew up on the Zambezi and white, you know, paddling on the White Nile, and was super passionate about that kind of kayaking. And I was spending a lot of time in Eastern Africa at that point too, going to the Nile every year and expeditions to Madagascar and kind of all over. And yeah, so Fisher was just again, yeah, kind of like you said. It's always like talked about in whispers. You know, there was a French team that had gone there in the 80s, and all 7 people on that expedition had died. It was a rafting expedition, and so it was kind of like there was this like amount of just like I think like deep-seated fear surrounding going there because like nobody had been back since then. There was also like a lot of rumors about what had happened to them. Some people say they drowned. Some people say they were executed. Neither outcome is great, you know? And so, yeah, Fisher started putting this thing together in kind of like, I think 2009, 2010. I remember he invited me to come down to Jackson, Wyoming, where he was living, and to look at this. He had all these big like satellite images of the rapids, and he had actually been there on a scouting trip like the year prior and gotten some photos. And so, man, I remember looking at those photos, and you know, Tyler Brott and I, we flew down there together actually, I remember, and we were really like having to think about it, like, is this actually something that we really kind of want to do? And you know, it was actually a pretty tough decision, just because I think there was like a real concern about like what is the actual feasibility of this, like if those guys did drown on this in rafts, like, you know, the whirlpools. I mean, not exaggerating. Like you've got whirlpools that are at, somewhere between probably 20 to 40 feet wide. The river is 700 feet deep through that canyon. The waves that are 30 feet high, maybe more. I mean, it's huge. And when you've only got like these kind of like satellite images to go off of, it's like, is this a good idea? And I think we kind of just like, at least me, I kind of came to the conclusion of like, okay, it's just like any river trip, right? Like you can get to the put in and you can get to the first rapid and you can look at it and you can decide, you know what, like fuck this, I'm out. Like you got that choice. And so that's kind of what we decided on, is like we would go to the White Nile to train for about a month, kind of get ourselves prepped. And it definitely, I think to this day, I don't know that anything quite like nothing like that, I don't think has really been done since, because it kind of just required a whole different level of like safety too, like we had breathing apparatuses like in our life jackets, so that if we got stuck in a whirlpool or went deep, we'd have a couple minutes of oxygen, additional flotation like devices that we could pull. We had like chastity belt things on our cockpit rims, which is a device Tyler Brott invented for when he set the world record, which is kind of like clamps you sort of into the clamps your spray skirt around the cockpit rim, hand paddles attached to the front of the boat, so if for some reason you lost your paddle, you'd have that as like a last resort. Paddle leash, like things that you just don't necessarily do unless you're really kind of taking it to that next level. And then of course, like we had a helicopter in tow with a guy who would be able to jump out of it and potentially like grab us if we got into a bad spot, although we didn't find out till afterwards that the odds of him actually being able to like nail us were like slim to none. But we sort of had that like false sense of security that maybe he could do something. So yeah, there's just a lot of like steps taken to get there, to go to the Congo. And then not to mention just the political landscape there too, like the Congo is a place that is one of the most violent and deadly on earth. I think, over the last decade or two, up to 6 million plus people have been killed there fighting over precious minerals like coltan. So you've got this really kind of dark sort of landscape in terms of like the political side of it, and then as well as just like this unknown with the whitewater. It's like the only trip I've ever done where I was like, as I was flying there, just like really in my head thinking like, am I gonna die out here? Is this a good idea? Definitely have never had that level of like fear and anxiety on any river trip ever. And I never will again, I don't think. But yeah, it did take a lot of courage to kind of muster up to go. But, in the end, I was glad I did, because we all made it home in one piece. So that was good.
Yeah. And you were able to navigate through the section you wanted to.
Yeah, we were able to run everything without having to portage, which was pretty cool. There was we had to sneak a lot of stuff down these kind of side channels, which were very sort of creaky. But there was a lot of places where we just had to go into the middle of the river, into the middle of the flow, and kind of weave and bob and weave our way through these, massive whirlpools and hydraulics. And it was just this, like, if anybody or anyone who's paddled big water, it's like there's this really like random element to big water where 5 people can run the same rapid and everybody can have kind of a different line. And I feel like the Congo was like that on steroids, where it was, I remember scouting one of the very first rapids and there being this kind of like hydraulic, like ledge hole sort of like, breaking, and then all over after a while it would kind of turn into more like a big glassy wave, and it was like this really, it kind of behaved more like an ocean in a lot of ways, with that much water confined to that small of a canyon. Just kind of creates really unpredictable whitewater and whirlpools, which, like, honestly, the sketchiest parts of those rivers are 100% the eddy lines. Like, it's the main rapids are also scary, but it was like, making sure you didn't get out in the wrong spot where there's something that might suck you down really deep.
Yeah, it's another one of those accomplishments. It's like if that was mountaineering or something, it would have been celebrated all over.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's there's a lot of, I don't know. Everything's different. Like, it's like I still look at like the Sangpo and what those guys did there with the 30 day expedition and in the heart of the Himalayas in the cold of winter, like there's a lot of amazing stuff people have done over the years, and all of it is I'm always, I'm impressed by, but I think like Congo is kind of special in the sense that there's just nothing like it, I don't think there ever really will be anything quite to that scale in terms of big water. And I mean, I think there's a reason nobody has been back yet, and I'm sure somebody will someday. I think drones would probably make it a little bit easier without a helicopter, but for us at the time, I don't know how we could have done it. It would have been very difficult to do without helicopter support, where we could actually scout every rapid, and then return home each night to the place we were kind of basing out of, because that's what we were doing. We would basically, get shuttled in the chopper, do the section of whitewater, go back to this military base that we were staying at with like armed guards, and then get helicoptered back to the place we kind of finished the day before. You could have maybe done it self-supported, but it would have been harder, a lot harder. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sure someone will be back at some point, and I'll be really curious to see how what they think of it.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone will be back. Could be a while still.
Could be, but somebody will someday for sure.
But yeah, Sangpo, I'm surprised. I guess it's just we're so political there. It's just hard to get into Tibet. But so as far as that, Lindgren, he just kind of started kayaking again, right? A few years ago, 5-6 years ago, and getting really back into it. And you started hooking up with him, and is that how the idea came to make River Runner?
Yeah, I mean, I had, I made another film called Chasing Niagara, which I finished in like 2016, and yeah, I was kind of like looking for the next project, trying to figure out kind of like what was next, and I had actually well before I started working on Niagara, I'd reached out to Scott Lindgren because I grew up watching his movies, and I had created a little proposal for a film that at the time was called California Kayak, and I wanted to do like a history of boating in California movie, focusing on Lars and Chuck and Lindgren and kind of like some of the pioneers who'd done a lot of the early stuff and like some of that history. And I pitched it to Red Bull, and I sent it to Lindgren. I like tried to get support for it, and it just never went anywhere. So that was kind of like the original thought I had. And then I did Middle Kings with Scott in like 2017, and he had more or less been kind of vanished for like a decade. And it was on that Middle Kings trip that he really kind of like opened up to me and filled me on his whole story with his brain tumor and with his therapy journey. And I've known Lindgren since I was like a kid, and there has always been this kind of like this edge to Lindgren. Anybody who I think knew him during that period of time, like could run into that. But the experience I had with him on Middle Kings was like, he's a much kinder, much more, much different person than I feel like he was when he was sort of in his younger years. And it was on that trip that I was like, man, this is a deep story. There's definitely something here, that's I think really interesting. You got this like icon of the sport who basically kind of disappeared for a long time, had his battles with alcohol and his own sort of addictions, and had to go through having this brain surgery and like all this like crazy, there's all these aspects of it, and so I basically kind of I just asked him, like, could I make this into a short film? This was what I wanted to do at the time, and I thought we would maybe go into some of his history and kind of tackle the story on like a smaller scale. And it was actually around that time, too, that he had also told me about his dream to paddle the 4 rivers off of Mount Kailash, which, he'd completed 3 of the 4, and the final one was the Indus, which was something that I had always wanted to do as well. And so, like kind of all those elements sort of came together at the same time in that kind of like summer of 2000, and I think it was summer of 2017. And that fall I went to the Indus, and, I hadn't found any funding for the movie or anything. And I just kind of just on a whim, just like went for it and sort of put my own money into going to, going over there and kind of just documenting Scott's journey along the way, and was able to kind of cut like a sizzle reel together for that. And, ultimately find some funding to create a feature film around it, which we ultimately, were able to license to Netflix. But it went from a short film to becoming this like way bigger beast than I ever anticipated once I sort of realized the depth of the story and how much work needed to be done.
Yeah. Then you did it.
It worked out, like it's like these things are always risky, and at the time it feels daunting and like, man, am I actually gonna get my money back out of this? Am I gonna is it gonna work? But these films and projects, they require risk, and that's something that I've definitely done a decent bit of, so it's worked out so far, but you never know.
Well, it's kind of, you can never really beat life that way, right? It's like you've got to do the risk to get the benefit, or it's always balanced, right? It's like no matter what path you choose, you can't really make out that much better than someone else. I know you have a lyric, every hustler gives up something, right? One of your songs.
Yeah. God, I won't be able to remember it on the spot, but yeah, it's in the song Hustler.
Yeah. Yeah, you ever feel like, oh man, why'd I choose this journey? Or you just have such a creative outlet, you got to get out there, you have no choice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I for sure there are days when I wake up and it's like it's like any life, like it's not always going to be perfect, or you're going to feel like you're on the right path. We all second guess ourselves or really question what we're doing. But I think it's times like those where you also evolve a lot. And, when I've gone through periods of time like that, where it has been hard, like I went through kind of a rough chapter, just like after, honestly, kind of during River Runner, like post sort of Indus, like just, it's always been like at the tail end of like big journeys, like big projects, like, or big expeditions where I kind of feel the most down. And I think that's pretty normal, honestly. I think it's like you kind of have these like sort of peak emotional highs, and then it's like you're kind of like, okay, like what's next? It's kind of like the rebuilding, the correction, the like, yeah, like that sort of just like figuring it out, where you're sort of like, yeah, kind of questioning it all. And that still happens to me all the time. It's like no matter how many projects I do, I'm still not sure that the next one's gonna totally work. But I don't know, you do it enough times that you start to just like have a little more faith in yourself, I guess.
Yeah, you gotta put it out there. You can't beat. Yeah, I think of it kind of like that old yin yang symbol. I don't even know what it really means in Buddhism or whatever, but to me, it's just like, yeah, you can't beat that. No matter what decision you make in life, or no matter what high you have or low, it always kind of balances out. And even in the dark, there's some bright light that you never expected, and the dark you never expected.
No, I think that's true. I think you gotta have both. It's yeah. Otherwise, like the highs wouldn't feel like anything if you didn't experience some lows. But I think balance is definitely the nice spot, sweet spot.
But it's like a apex curve, though, right? Being balanced as a human, it's like you can sit there for a second, but it's like being on a magnet. It's kind of going off.
No, you're right. You're totally right. Yep.
But no, it's cool on your music too, though. You talk about all that type of stuff, right? Just about life and thinking about it, and is that in that one song where that woman is talking about like navigating the journey of life? Is that your mom, or?
No, that's a woman named Melody. My friend Skip Armstrong made a film called The Mother, which if you haven't checked it out, it's a really beautiful short film that NRS put out. But yeah, I sampled her voice from that little short film, which is a really cool short film, and really kind of spoke to me.
I didn't know if that was your mom, and she was like, kind of had talked like that to you growing up, to where you kind of thought deeply. I mean, I'm sure your parents did, right? But like you kind of explore all those thoughts, right? And don't lock them away, like is kind of human nature.
Yeah. I mean, everything she says in that clip is really speaks to me. It's like that, the mystery is part of it, right? It's like, there's, if you sort of knew the answers to everything, it'd be like probably a little bit less interesting. So, and that's kind of where I stand today too. It's like, anybody who thinks they really know what's going on here definitely doesn't. I mean, there's like, I think there's hints and there's clues and there's, maybe you can be a little more tapped in on some stuff, and you can, go into the jungle and do ayahuasca and tap into some pretty like interesting ideas and and some, access some pretty interesting parts of the mind. But I think so much of it still just remains like a pretty, at times, daunting mystery.
Yeah, about all I can figure out is just to savor at this time, right? I mean, I don't know what place could be more heavenly than this planet, being a human on this planet, right? I mean, look at where you were just in Africa, and then you're on the white salmon, and now you're about to go to Baja to go kiting. It's like, where's more heavenly than that, And it's like there's the mind though always worries about whatever, but it's like, man, if you just take it to the moment of like, man, I'm a human on this earth today. This place is paradise.
It's a really good point, and it's something that I try to really stay grateful for that. It's like I try to I do a morning meditation practice right after I wake up, and I do one right when I go to bed at night, and I usually will finish with a moment of gratitude and just thankfulness. And like I feel like younger me might have like looked at what I'm saying right now and been like, that's some pretty soft shit, dude, or whatever. But it really does help me now, because I also deal with like a lot of people. I deal with anxiety, and I deal with PTSD, and I deal with some weird sort of symptoms that have arisen over the years, I think, from a life of something that's really joyous, but also is stimulation, and I think like I actually kind of have a theory that I don't know that like what we're doing to ourselves, like those of us who've lived, like put ourselves in a life where we're doing, adrenaline sports where it's like fight or flight, like, not just a few times like here and there, but it's like the daily grind is like really kind of scaring yourself, watching friends get into bad situations, rescuing friends, having friends die, and then also just experiencing these extreme highs where everything is just like, it's like the most fun thing that you can possibly imagine every single day. When you do that for like 30 plus years of your life, I think so much of it is great, but for me personally, it has like taken a certain type of toll, which is just something I've been like navigating lately, and kind of like hit me out of the blue, actually, just with dealing with some of the sort of negative sleep kind of things that have kind of come along with that for me. But the one thing that I has really started to help me is actually like adopting more of a sort of a gratitude practice, a meditation practice, and also just like trying to like chill out a little bit sometimes, because I do think we're living in this culture where it's it's not just in adventure sports, it's in any lifestyle or any like work sort of ethic, especially in the United States, where it's just kind of like ingrained in us that it's like work trumps everything, and you just gotta grind, you just gotta hustle. And like, I feel like, what does Lennon say? Like, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And, I really do think that that's true in a lot of ways. And, yeah, something that I've been working on myself, because I'm guilty of just getting stuck in this cycle of perpetual, just like go, without actually getting to step back and be like, man, I am so lucky to be here and just like enjoy this moment for what it is.
Yeah. I think it's so common, right, for anyone that has that type of life of just so stimulation, whether it's professional skier, surfer, kayaker, that's such a common thing for once that sort of ends to, drink way too much, or do all these, even local heroes, right, in the towns do a similar pattern. It's like, you just really have to reinvent yourself throughout life, right? It's kind of, you can't stay the same. And the meditations, that's really just like going to the gym, I think, of for your mind, right? I mean, people put so much time and energy into their bodies and going to gyms, but not into their mind. And yeah, I do it every morning before I let myself look at the phone, so that I have some motive. But I got to get like a cup of coffee in me before I can get some, like slurping down the first cup.
I do the same. I do a similar thing. I'll get my routine will be, wake up and I'll go and I'll put the coffee on. That's the very first thing I'll do. And then I'll go do my meditation practice while it's boiling. And it's honestly just like short. And I think that's, sometimes I'll go longer, but I just commit to 5 minutes in the morning. And then in the evening, I commit to 5 minutes too, but it oftentimes will turn into like 10 to 20. But I feel like that's been a helpful thing for me, is something I've adopted, is just commit to a small amount of time, even if it's 1 minute. And I feel like I, for a long time, had a hard time with meditation because I didn't understand like what it did. And it kind of took me actually having some pretty like, weird sort of health symptoms from, I think, from anxiety and PTSD, that I ended up being like, okay, no, I gotta do something to chill my brain out. It took like 37 years before these like things started to like happen in my brain where I was like, whoa, this is super strange. So for me, it's really been helpful. And, I think there's a lot you can do though, like, diet, exercise, all of those things are like super important, community. But yeah, you gotta, just like going to the gym, you gotta give your brain a space to rest that's not just sleeping, because sleeping is different from meditation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got into it during COVID. Had a close friend, this woman Whitney I grew up with. She was like one of the boys, with all of us in Park City, and she just started an online thing with this Tibetan monk during COVID, and that was exactly what he said. What you just said. He's like, "Oh, you do 1 minute, great," and he's like, "Anytime if your mind wanders and you bring it back, you just won." And yeah, started there, and I'm up to like 15 minutes is
Great.
usually what I do.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And I did one thing. My breakthrough happened last year. I went and I just did I did a 3-day silent meditation, like no reading, no writing. All you can do is meditate, or you can walk in the woods. And I just like rented a cabin up on Mount Adams, and I just did that by myself. And that was a trip. Like if you've never tried that, it's like a borderline psychedelic type of experience. Because by day 3, it's like you get so bored, but when you get bored, you just meditate. So there's nothing else that you can really do. And not reading and writing is really interesting, because I found that that's, I think, a big escape for me. And that's like, I think it's a healthy way to deal with emotions, but it's also like, it can become a crutch, I think, too. If it's like, that's anytime you're sort of dealing with something, you're not necessarily just allowing your brain to process it. And I think, silent meditation really kind of help with that, where by like day 3, I was like, oh, this is actually what meditation is. This is like, I'm entering a totally different sort of like plane of consciousness, that, Buddhists and folks like that have been tapping into for thousands of years. This is not something, it's a new in the Western sort of world, as I suppose, but, yeah, definitely recommend it for folks who are curious,
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's new, right? Even like in traditional churches, right? They
yeah, maybe so.
kind of meditate, so it's just
Or
everyone
pray, and I think praying is actually like an interesting one too. Like I never, I'm not religious by any means, but I have found myself more drawn to that in the last couple years as well. So, yep.
But yeah, as you said, gratitude. Like you read these studies, or like where they measure people and what brings them happiness, and it's like gratitude is really the thing.
Yep. No, I think that's right.
But being a human's hard.
It's definitely not easy all the time. It's like, yeah, and as much as like things can look great on paper, it's like we all deal with the same stuff. Existence is not, it's not a easy path for anybody, I don't think.
Well, I love how your music explores it, I mean, for me, like I listen all the time, and it just like really explores all of that, all of life's. I feel like there's almost a song right now for like each of my life period.
Yeah, cool.
Experience.
That's awesome, man. No, yeah, I appreciate it, and I'm actually excited. I've got a bunch of new tracks that I think I'll be able to finish like this year, which I'm pretty excited about. It's kind of a little bit of a different style, but still kind of similar to the sort of folk hop vibe. But I'd say it leans a little more in the like, I would say kind of a little bit more hip hop, Jack Johnson, like, yeah, it's a little more pop, I would say, driven, but in like not in a not in like a cheesy pop way. It feels a little bit more evolved and different than the previous efforts. So I'm excited to share that here soon.
Nice.
Oh, and I've got a sorry to interrupt. I got a remix album coming out in a few months too, which is kind of fun. Been given the lessons in folk hop to a lot of like electronic producers, and they've been doing their thing with it, and it sounded pretty cool. So I'm excited to put that out.
Sick. Yeah, I listen to it sometimes and think like, man, if you had grown up on the North Shore and were like all in with the surf community instead of the kayaking one, you'd be huge.
Yeah, well, like I'd love to find I'd love to connect with Jack Johnson. Like that would be the dream, because he's like had this like path of being a pro surfer, documentary filmmaker, musician. I'm like, if anybody knows him who's listening, just feel free to connect us.
Well, you are the Jack Johnson of Whitewater, right? So it's just like, that's just a different deal.
Well, that's high praise, and yeah, thank you. But Jack crushes it for sure.
Yeah. So how are you feeling? Seems like you're feeling good these days, huh? Did you think you'd be in this good a shape and still kayaking like this? You're almost 40, right?
Yeah, I turned 40 next week, which is kind of crazy. It's funny, man. Like when you're younger and you're like, I remember like, cause Fisher was always like 10 years older than me, and Dane's like 10 years younger than me. So it's like, I feel like those are kind of like some of the, I don't know, sort of generation gaps. And I remember when Fisher was like 35, I was like, man, in my head, I was like, you could just like retire and you'd be stoked, like you've already done so much. And I don't know, then you get to like 40 and I'm like, granted, a lot of the people I grew up paddling with are not still doing it on the same level or as much. And I've definitely stepped back a lot, like I'm a mostly like backyard little white kayaker. Like that's mostly what I do is work from home on film projects. And I still get out when the river's in, probably, 3 to 5 days a week, and do the gym the other days, and still go travel and do some paddling, but it's changed a lot. But yeah, like I feel like in a lot of ways, like I'm in better shape than I was 10 or 15 years ago. Like I never used to go to the gym like the same amount that I do now, or like jog, and like I just kayaked and that was it. And then once I started having injuries and hurting my shoulders and my back and all of that, like it just sort of forced my hand to like be like, okay, I gotta take care of myself off the river too, which I feel like is like something that almost every athlete eventually has to face. You can't, maybe you can just kayak forever, but you're not going to be as strong as if you can kind of work out in other ways and cross train. So I guess to answer your question, like I don't know that I ever did think I would, I feel like I've always known that I'd be a lifer. Like I'm never going to be that kind of person that's like, okay, I'm retiring from this. I'm sure I'll step back, especially if I ever have like a family or something. It might be like time to not be doing the like, super high water stuff. But yeah, TBD. We'll see. I'm still feeling good for now.
Yeah. No, I agree. I never thought I'm 47, and that seemed ancient when I was a kid, right? It seemed like I feel great, same way. Been even like better than I ever did when I was younger, because I didn't really train, right?
Yeah.
But the injuries, that's also part of that, come down talking about, right? I've had 2 surgeries on each shoulder.
Yep.
And 1 on each knee from skiing, but yeah, that's another thing to get over.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. Like, I mean, I'm dealing with back pain, and you just gotta like change your relationship with a little bit. Like I had to kind of stop running Spirit as much, and it's like my motivations for kayaking are kind of different in a lot of ways too. Like I'm so much more addicted to the fitness aspect of it now, that some days I'm like, actually, I'm going to kind of get more out of this day if I go for a long trail run and go to the gym, like, that being said, like kayaking's awesome because you get the fun factor and you get the fitness component, but, it's just slightly different now than it used to be for me,
And I found this back pain game changer because mine was from punch bowl. It was like low water and boofed it far left
Ooh,
and just
yeah.
into the green.
Oh God.
At 19 years old, and back's hurt since then. Locks up. We had one of those 6-wheel drive Soviet troop transport trucks in Kyrgyzstan,
Uh-huh.
and it would just from the bouncing, I would just be locked. But anyway, it always bothered me, and just couple years ago, I just ordered this like $15 just plastic arch off of Amazon,
Okay.
and just laying on that has been a game changer. Now I just use a pillow or whatever's around, just put a pillow under my lower back and just lay back for a minute or two, and
Right.
it seems like it's been huge improvement.
That's cool. Yeah. Shoot me over the Amazon details on that. I'll buy one. It seems like a good deal. Yeah, I've been trying to do a little more yoga and stuff like that, but it tends to flare up when I'm like super active. Like if I'm doing a lot of fitness, I'll like 4 or 5 times a year get the like full like lock up of my like upper back too, where everything's just kind of like super locked and messed up, but just part of the game these days.
What waterfall was it that you broke your back on?
That was Bonito Falls down in Argentina, which is like this, I don't know, like 70 to 80-ish foot kind of like twisting drop that free falls for like, I don't know, 50 or 60 feet. And I just landed straight into green water, flat. And yeah, that did it, L2 vertebrae. But, fortunately I didn't have to get surgery and made a relatively pretty quick comeback on that one. Tyler brought broke his back, and like it was much more severe, and he had to get surgery, and it's kind of sliding scale, I feel like, with the back breaks.
Yeah. But yeah, backs and shoulders kayaking takes them out.
Yeah, back, shoulders, concussions, noses. Yep, those are all part of it. But it's funny because it's like kayaking is, I feel like compared to mountain biking, probably even skiing, it's like we kind of don't deal with injury as much as other athletes, I feel like. But I would say the sport is arguably a little more dangerous maybe on the high end level, I don't know. Skiing's got its own thing with avalanches and whatnot, but like, yeah, there's just like a little bit more, and I don't know if you agree or not, but just there's kind of an X factor in kayaking with like, it's like bad stuff can kind of happen in the easy places too, like quite easily. And oftentimes that's when I found myself in trouble in weird spots where you're not necessarily running the hardest stuff. In fact, it's usually not when you're running the hardest stuff. And so that's always like kind of just like a little bit of a spooky part of the sport.
Yeah, no, kayaking's definitely scary. I guess if you think about humans, right, you would never go into a river like that. Like just from tens of hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution, it was like, stay the hell out of a river like that.
Yeah.
You can't breathe.
Yeah, that's actually one interesting thing about working with indigenous communities is like so many of them have these stories about the river, usually manifesting as some kind of like a scary type of spirit, or something that is to be feared a bit, because like, without a doubt, these, cultures that have grown up along the river, it's been a formidable, force and something that can easily drown you. And especially if you're crossing and dugout canoes and, things that could easily capsize, like it for sure, it's something to be respected. And, I feel like sometimes we probably get like a bit of a, I don't know, it's easy to get desensitized, like to actually how powerful it is. And sometimes it just takes, a little swim to remember, oh yeah, this is pretty gnarly.
We can't breathe when stuff goes wrong. So.
Pretty unpleasant. I like breathing for sure.
But it also is that you got to really release to the power of the river, right? I feel like every other sport, skiing, mountain biking, whatever, you have this control over what you're doing, whereas in the river, once you pull in, you can only work with it, you don't have control. You can't stop.
It's so exposed in that way, it's like if you crash on a mountain bike, it's like it's like things stop. And I mean, granted with skiing, it's like you can get caught in a slough and you're going to tumble down the mountain, you're going to stop at some point. Kayaking is like, when you swim, it's like your adventure is just kind of started, especially if it's a long continuous rapid. Then you're like on, then you're the next level of it. Okay, it's like, how do I get to shore? And I mean, those are the most terrifying, parts of kayaking for sure. Is ending up swimming in a bad spot and having to contend with, all the different things that happen at that point.
Any place that you can't wait to get back to, or that you really want to go again?
Man, I was just over on the Zambezi like last month, and that was just awesome. I had such a fun time paddling over there. So I'd like to go back to the Zam at some point. It's just easy living and really a mellow place to just kind of chill and kayak. I would, I think, love to get back to Nepal at some point. I had a trip over there a couple years back that got cut a little bit short because I ended up in like this earthquake, and so I feel like I might have some kind of just like unfinished business over there, which would be cool to go back to. Fuda. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of like at that point in my paddling career where I'm like kind of stoked on the logistically more simple, easy places. Not that I wouldn't entertain going on some expedition again, but I would have to have like a decent reason to at this point, I think.
Yeah, Nepal is so good. Went there a lot when I was younger, but it's all just so set up, right?
Yeah.
You can get anywhere. It's so cheap, and
Totally.
people are so amazing, and it's just so gorgeous in the Himalaya. And anyone like can go there, right, and do the safety kayaking thing, right? That kind of Alan Ellard and those guys, Mikey and them doing 30, 40 years ago. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there once I was on the plane with just like from Thailand to Nepal, and I was flying alone, and Mikey was on there.
Oh,
Just
nice.
happened to see him checking his bag, and we hadn't met before, but we sat together, and I was like, he's like, oh, how many times have you been? And I was like, all proud. I was like, oh, it's like I think it was like my 4th time at that point. And he's like, it's like you. He's like, oh, it's my 10th time. 10th season.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, those guys are legend. I feel like it's probably changed a lot since then. I know a lot of the rivers have been unfortunately dammed and whatnot, but there's still some goods there to be had for sure.
Oh, yeah. Good living. So what is the Africa project? Is that something that's coming out? What was that?
Yeah,
about?
so that was actually for Paddle Tribal Waters. So two of the sort of top kids in the program, they actually got scholarships to go to the non-native World Class Academy this last fall. So they were over there, paddling with the school. And so they're two of the kids I've been kind of following their journey now for a few years. And we are basically kind of highlighting, them training for the Klamath First Descent, but also highlighting the Batoka Dam project, which is the large-scale hydro project that's currently slated to happen on the Zambezi, which would essentially end commercial kayaking and rafting there. Would dam everything up to most likely all the way up to like just below rapid number 3, so you'd lose kind of almost everything pretty much.
Wow. And that's moving along? Or?
It's TBD. I mean, it's one of those things that, like all these dam projects, they're often delayed. They often have complications. It's often there's often corruption, So, but I'm weary to say it's stagnant because like they have done construction on the roads and like they've started on some stuff, and like I feel like this kind of happened on the White Nile too, where everybody was a little bit like, oh, it's like maybe coming, maybe it's not, and then all of a sudden one day it was like there was a dam there and everything was gone, And I think this could super easily happen. So like my goal would be to raise some awareness surrounding it because ultimately they're trying to dam a World Heritage site. Victoria Falls, one of the wonders of the world. And a lot of the locals there don't even realize that it's actually going to end, the commercial rafting scene as they know it. And they already have the Kariba Dam downstream, which is currently failing because of ongoing drought. They don't have a great game plan for like how the power gets distributed, or, there's just like sounds like a lot of flaws within the sort of, construction process. And also they're dealing with drought, so it's like at a time where climate change is kind of just becoming in its infancy, honestly, in a lot of ways. Like, it's going to get a lot worse. Does doing another large-scale hydro project when you don't have much water, does that make the most sense, or is there a way to invest in solar instead? Like, are there alternatives? And like, I'm a little out of my depth with some of those questions and answers, but like, I think that I think it would be such it would be tragic to lose that section of river, and not from just like a recreational standpoint. You know, you have locals that depend on it for fishing and for their livelihoods, not to mention spiritual practices and the nami nami. And, you know, it's like, at what point, like, you're going to really dam everything up to the base of Victoria Falls? Like, it just seems like such a flawed one to me.
Like you said, all of a sudden it happens, and just like on the White Nile, it's gone. And the most legendary kayaker bar of all time, the Harry Lemon, gone forever.
Gone forever underwater. Like, it's tragic, you know. I mean, I think I did like at least 10 trips to the White Nile. Like, that was such a special place to me, and some of my best memories in life will be on that river. And it's you know, a few rapids remain, but it's not the same as what it was, that's for sure.
Yeah. So that traveling, so you were just right off from, like, maybe World Class kind of got you into that too, of like, oh, we can travel anywhere in the world. And then once you're following that passion of whitewater, it's like the whole world's open. It doesn't matter. Let's just go.
Yeah, I think, World Class definitely helps with that. It kind of teaches you how to travel a little bit too. And, you know, I was, lucky to go to, I did New Zealand and Ecuador when I was in World Class, and I haven't returned to Ecuador, but I've been back to New Zealand like 4 times since then. And, it just kind of opened the floodgates, so to speak.
Wow, 10 trips to the White Nile.
Yeah, I factored at one point I spent over a year of my life there, and then did a bunch of other stuff too. Like, I did a lot of trips to Madagascar as well. I did four expeditions there, which I still think is the most underrated kayaking location in the world. I'm always, everybody who goes there and checks it out is just blown away by the quality. Starting to get a little bit more attention for sure. More trips going there, like 1 a year kind of thing. But yeah, that place is magical. Super, super cool.
Yeah, it looks amazing, that red dirt.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that was actually a breakthrough trip when Brad Ludden, one of your old paddling partners, invited me to go over there and do an expedition. That was kind of like sort of breakout period for me.
Nice. And that, because that was before when he went over with the first ascents thing, too, right?
That was the very first trip that he did, yeah. And then I went for that trip too. I went with Arden and Trask on that one as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
What did you guys run on that first trip with Ludden?
We did the Sahatandra River, and we did the Akupa River, and we did Lily Falls. I don't know. I think we did like three or four rivers. It wasn't a super long trip. It was just like a couple weeks. But we did do the first descent of the Akupa, which kind of went on to become a pretty classic section. And you did an expedition over there, or no?
No, I haven't been to Madagascar.
Okay, I know that somebody in your guys' crew went there. Maybe Matt Rusher or something.
I think Matt Wilson.
Matt Wilson. That's who it was. Yeah.
And just Matt Wilson style of just soul sessioning.
Yeah.
I saw some pictures. I was like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. Yep.
Nice. Right on. Yeah, man, it's so amazing how like that getting into this sport took you just so many places all over the world, right? Like, what else could have even like taken you all those different places?
I know kayaking's cool like that because it's like anywhere there's mountains, there's rivers, you know, and I don't know, we get to go to a lot of unique and interesting different types of places. Like practically every country on earth just about you could probably find, or you can find a river on, and you can find something to run probably.
Yeah, no. All that we're talking about, like savoring, it's like, was I savoring enough back then? You know, we were having a damn good time, but did we ever really look around and be like, fuck yeah, look what we're doing?
I feel like I did. I mean, it's like you probably had these experiences too, but it's like when you're at the bottom of a big rapid, or you're deep in a gorge somewhere, or there's just, you know, there's that really that feeling that just like nobody, it's not, I don't want to say that no one gets it, but it's just like, it's so inaccessible besides from a kayak. Like how else are you going to get into these places? Like maybe there's other ways, but chances are nobody has been to a lot of those spots, and I don't know, there's a special feeling in those parts of the world.
Yeah, no, I hadn't really thought of that particular, but yeah, that's when I've had that feeling, right? When you've run a big drive, maybe get out in the pool waiting for your buddies to come over, and just like that feeling comes over you, like, yeah.
It's pretty magical, I will say, for sure.
It was magical. So you've been kiting a bunch? You go to Baja regularly for kiting?
No, I'm a beater. I'm just learning. I just started last year with the wing foiling, and so I got into winging last summer. I guess summer before last, and then yeah, this last end of the summer I started doing the sup foiling, and I'm less than, I don't know, less than 10 sessions on that, but that's what I'm actually most fired up on is the sup foiling. So gonna go down and spend my 40th down there with some friends, and hopefully do some sup foiling and some wing foiling and beach life. You know, this is the next chapter of an aging kayaker. So I went once last year, but no, I haven't actually been to Baja for this sport too much before, so just once.
Yeah. Now you got to get the ocean fixed, right? I mean, it's all parts of the planet, the mountains, the rivers, deserts, the ocean, they're all just so maybe, yeah, no, and I've been down there like about 5 years on the East Cape there by Nine Palms
Nice.
and La Fortuna. And yeah, I had to be like, when I first got into it, I was like, okay, what if I'm like the Texan who moves up and wants to get into like kayaking, what do they got to do? I mean,
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 20 years, you know, I've been surfing all my life, but it's like a week or two here or there, you know, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, they got to watch all the movies, you know, and like get up to speed. So like I watched all the surf movies from like the 50s
Oh,
through,
cool. Nice.
and then just going a shitload, right? But it's been so fun to like develop that same love for the ocean, you know, that you have for the mountains and rivers.
Totally. Yeah, it's a different beast, and it's cool here too because we're on the Columbia River doing it, which is nice, you know. Yeah, that's actually what's kind of rad here is it's like you can literally run the Little White, and then you're at the put in for a world class subfoiling section all the way to the mouth of the White Salmon, you know. So it's like living here. It's kind of one of those sports I feel like you just gotta do it, you know.
And so you'll do some downwinders on the subfoil down there?
Yeah, that's what I'm planning on. I mean, I'm a beater, so it's like I'm like popping up and riding for the most I've probably ridden is like 30, 45 seconds, you know? So mostly I'm just suffering out there trying to pop up, but I'm hoping that by the end of this trip I'm starting to get it a little more. I mean, it's cool with kayaking background because you learn the paddling part like super fast. It's the foiling part that just is a little more foreign.
Yeah, it seems like everyone has a big learning curve on that. Actually, like, down where I am, that's pretty desolate, right? That whole part of Baja. But Jerry Lopez surfs this break down below me regularly. He has a place there, and watched him like get into foiling there,
cool.
you know.
Yeah.
And he's crazy. He spends like 8 hours in the water, you know, doing
Wow.
every little thing. But I just watched him suck at foiling, you know, from the beach, but he'd just stay out there, and
Yeah.
now he rips it up, right? But that was super inspiring. Like, wow, you know, even someone like that, not afraid to kind of suck and then like
Yeah.
get it.
Oh yeah, it's humbling learning something new and just sucking at it, but it's pretty cool. The foiling thing it's a rad feeling. I mean, it's like, don't know what to compare it to, but it's like being in powder on a snowboard or skis. It's like that same feeling of kind of weightlessness or flying, which is it's nice because like kayaking or, you know, sports where you're surfing and you're like kind of making contact with the water, like that's its own thing, but to kind of be like above that and be like utilizing the forces beneath the surface, which are similar to what's on the surface, but just like a variation on it. Like it's pretty cool. I definitely, I'm fully hooked on it. It's fun.
Yeah, it's definitely taken over so many places, the foiling.
Really has. Yeah. Yep.
I think we'll see a lot more. Probably like the motor foils will get a lot more advanced too.
Yeah. And I feel like, man, at some point I'm like, I want to put one of these things on a freestyle boat and go to Skook or like do so. I feel like it's sort of up for debate, but I feel like there's no reason that kayaks shouldn't be able to do the same thing. I feel like we could probably, with some serious like, it would take some innovation. I know Corin kind of tried it, but nobody's really done it properly yet, which I think would be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, there's got to be some application there, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems so hard to balance, just on no matter what you're doing it on.
It is crazy hard to balance. Like I was humbled learning it. I thought it was going to be like, learning to like wake surf or like, or a snowboard or whatever. Like I have a board sports background. I skate, snowboard, like but learning to foil is like, you're pretty pathetic those first few days. And then at least I was, and then it starts to make a little more sense.
So has the music stuff been kind of blowing up for you some? Like really kind of sprouting out further and further? More opportunities?
Not, I mean, I feel like I have like a core following, like it's not, I mean, I'm a small underground artist, like to be clear, like this is not some huge thing, but I've had a couple interesting things. Like I did have a chat with the owner of a big record label not too long ago who chatted with me about it, and talked to him for like an hour, and like no like offers or anything like that for anything bigger, but I think like the general like feedback I've gotten is that like it is a genre that I think like has potential, and I mean I'm not sure that I'm gonna be like the voice that like carries it through. Like I feel like my music is like niche and it speaks to like a very like certain audience, and maybe it speaks to a bigger audience, but like I feel like it resonates with like folks who have lived a similar life. But yeah, so that's why I'm kind of like, I think with this next project, like I'm again just gonna likely just like kind of self-release it, maybe share it with the guy that runs this label to see if it's like maybe a good fit for them or not. But like I'm leaning a little bit more into like, okay, like how do I take this same message like maybe to like a slightly bigger audience, if that makes sense, without it becoming like too pop or anything, and straying too far away from my kind of core values and messaging. So that's kind of the next thing I'm working on right now.
Yeah, I guess so much of it these days is kind of about live shows, right? Even like the huge guys, they're making their money on the live shows, and I don't know, yours is such produced music, right? I'm not good at work. Does it work on live shows? You ever do much of that?
Yeah, I think it actually does work really well. I mean, I did an album release party this last year, and I have such a great band. Like everybody who's playing on the album is this band that I've been working with for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. And those guys are just like legit as good as it like gets. Like they're incredible musicians, like banjo, Steve Berlin on saxophone. Like we've got, it's like this, it's a pretty rad live show. The hard part is just getting everybody's schedules to align where we can actually do a tour. And we were going to try to do a tour last year. We played a festival summer before, which went awesome, but it is a little hard for me because like I do have so many guest features and folks that like play on the songs with me that sometimes I feel like it's like gonna fall short if I don't have those guest features there, so I'm kind of navigating that. I've been chatting a little bit with the DJ just about, it's also costly, like if I go with a 6-piece band and try to tour, it's not going to make money. It's probably going to lose money. So it's like, could I pull this off with a DJ and maybe someone on guitar, or something like that. And so one thing I actually am doing on all my new songs is I'm singing a lot more. I've been doing vocal, singing lessons, and, trying to carry the weight a little bit more so that I'm not always relying on a guest feature. I've always been kind of self-conscious about the singing thing, but I'm trying to get a little bit more comfortable with that. So yeah, you'll be hearing definitely more of that on the new album.
When's that coming out?
I don't know. Probably sometime this year. I might just do an EP. Like I have like 5 songs that I've got decent demos for, and I just kind of need to like get them finished. 1 or 2 are done kind of. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at.
You got any films coming out this year?
I do. Yeah, I've got a bunch of films. I've got a new film about Boomer and Sarah, who are kind of Arctic expedition folks. It's called A Baffin Vacation. It's a Love on Ice. It's a sequel to a film I made with them last year called The
That
Bathroom.
was so good. That trailer was just, like,
Thanks.
so legendary. It was such a cool spin on and those two are such classic.
Oh man, they're beasts. They're beasts. Yeah, they're incredible. And this film is like, it's more expansive. It's bigger. It's like 25 minutes, and Red Bull Media House is distributing it along with Whitewater. So that one's coming out. We're gonna premiere it at a festival this spring, and then it'll come out probably in the summer on like streaming, or just like on YouTube and Red Bull TV. And then I've got the Paddle Tribal Waters film, which is we're doing the descent in June, so that's not gonna come out until probably 2026, which will be like probably like a 60 to 70 minute film feature. And then I'm also working on a Henry Coetzee life story on his kind of his career as a kayaker and untimely death, and that whole story is kind of like a passion project, kind of on the little bit of the back burner right now, but that's definitely something that I'm trying to work on more. And then I feel like there's something else too. Oh, I've got the Snow Leopard Sisters is coming out South by Southwest, so I'll be out there for that, which is a feature film that I'm an executive producer and cinematographer on, about a woman in Nepal who's been leading the fight on protecting snow leopards. So that's a feature as well. So those are kind of the big ticket items right now, along with some other kind of smaller projects in the mix too.
That's awesome. You're busy. Cool to see. Can't wait to see all of those.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Keep an eye out for the Snow Leopard Sisters one too. Like hopefully that's gonna looking like that might get some decent distribution here. We'll see. So you might be seeing it on a platform at some point.
And that's kind of what South by Southwest, you go around and try to get the distribution, just like a Sundance kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's like, I mean, I've never actually had a film get into South by Southwest, so I'm pretty excited. Like, it's definitely, it's a big festival, and it's, it's not this film is a buddy of mine's project that I sort of got involved with. Long story, but yeah, it was great. I got to go to Nepal twice the last couple of years to work on it, and spend time out in the Himalayas in the winter looking for snow leopards, and got to see one. And it's a pretty amazing story, I have to say. Like, it's very it's a beautiful film. I feel like it's really came together in a meaningful way, and pretty cool project.
That's epic, man. Yeah, well, super good to catch up.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. It was good to chat, and that's cool that you're doing this.
Yeah, and get the campfire stories digitally.
Yeah, you got to do it. Yep.
People aren't getting together enough.
Yeah, big time. Well, yeah, dude, thanks for making it happen, man. I appreciate it, and we'll stay in touch.
Likewise, thanks, brother.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Cheers, buddy.
See ya.